Thank you so much, everybody. Welcome to Build. I am your host, Ricky Camilleri, and this morning, the Tonys were announced. While often media likes to focus on the big celebrities behind the actors and the actresses categories, we here at Build are focusing on the creators, the people who built these shows from the ground up. And we have them here right now. Please put your hands together for some Tony nominees. From Tootsie director Scott Ellis, from Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations director Des McAnuff, and from Choir Boy choreographer Camille Brown. Let's hear it. Thank you so much for being here. Congratulations. I want to say first and foremost, on a personal level, for my taste alone, very well-deserved nominations. Your shows are incredible all around. I was dazzled by the comedy of Tootsie and how well choreographed that was. It felt like a joke a second was being thrown at me. The numbers of The Life and Times of the Temptations, the way you worked them into the story, the way you seamlessly wove and were able to weave them throughout the story, and your choreography in Choir Boy brought tears to my eyes at times. And to start with you, you know, Choir Boy was first performed in New York, I think a couple of years ago, right? With Jeremy Pope in the show then as well. But your choreography wasn't so much a part of it. It's new to the Broadway show. Is that true?
That is true. I wasn't a part of the show at Lincoln Center, and I was really nervous because I actually didn't get to see the show because it was sold out. And I know that it was a tremendously beloved show, so I was really nervous about making sure I wanted to really support Tripp and Terrell's vision for it.
This is Tripp Coleman, the director, and
Absolutely,
Terrell
Tripp
McCraney,
Coleman, yes.
the writer. So what was it like coming into the show? What sort of direction did they give you to put together this choreography?
Well, the beautiful thing about Terrell's work is that he really interlaced spirituals that are over 200 years old. So I was really able to go between the past and the present and to really support the authenticity of Black men dancing on stage. And I had continuous conversations with Tripp and Terrell, and I was interested in incorporating South African gumboot dance, which is a social dance form, and also honoring step, giving a little wave to HBCUs. So I was really tremendously, I was thankful for that opportunity, and they really gave me the space to put out my vision and my ideas.
And now this was, I mean, you had a group of men, some of which had dance experience, others had no dance experience. Is that correct?
Right, yes, but they all were so convicted, and they just moved and just gave themselves to it, because I feel like dance is not just about technique, and then we also have to question what is technique. And when you're talking about the African diaspora, we're talking about things that happen from the community. So it was also about empowering these young men to know that this is already a part of your heritage. So it's not about becoming something that you don't think you are. It's about stepping into what I know you are already and showcasing that on stage.
I want to come back to you and talk to you more about how you worked with them, because I remember we had Jeremy here to talk about Choir Boy, and he had spoken about how you specifically helped them find the moves rather than sort of like directing exactly what the moves were going to be. But speaking of beloved, you have The Temptations and you have Tootsie. You know, one of the most beloved American comedies and some of the most beloved music that there ever was. What is it like stepping into, I mean, that feels like a pressure cooker to me, to make sure that from the ground up you are doing well by The Temptations.
Yeah, I suppose that there's a certain amount of pressure, but it's also a fantastic, opportunity. Smokey Robinson and Norman Whitfield, these are, some of the greatest songwriters of all time. So there are, I think, a lot of advantages with starting with such an amazing score. And, I must say, Otis Williams, he's the surviving member of the Temptations.
It's his book, for which the show is primarily based on.
Yeah,
right?
and that inspired the show, and there are other sources, but that's the primary source. And Dominique Morisseau wrote the book for the musical. But he's such a gentleman that I think he took the pressure off because he was just so supportive. Of course, he has nothing to prove. And so he was very happy to give us a lot of freedom and license, and he's just been endlessly supportive. So I got to say, I know this sounds like a line, but it's been just a joyous creative experience from the beginning.
I'm curious for the both of you, musicals, when they're being built from the ground up. With Choir Boy, you already had the play at Lincoln Center, so then they sort of built it into something with you after that. But with you guys, I'm sure you're a part of the process for a number of years, workshopping this, and the script is changing. When did the both of you sort of jump onto these projects? When did they first start for you?
I was given the script. They had been working on it for a while, and then I got in 3 years ago. But the piece really needed some work, and so all I said was, before agreeing to do it, I said, we can't put the movie on the stage. And I'd been asked before to do some of movies to stage, and I just ultimately don't think they work that well, only because go see the movie. So I was very clear saying, if we're going to do this, we have to find a different way in. So
now at that stage, in the movie, it's a soap opera that
Right.
Dustin Hoffman's character is donning drag to get a part in. In your show, it is a Broadway musical that the characters are sort of struggling to get parts in. Was that part of your sort of input that, like, let's not do the movie here, let's actually find a way to present it as a musical?
Yes, I mean, it was, the reality is there are no soap operas. Are there any more soap operas? I don't know. There might be, I don't know.
They're a viable,
I don't know if they're viable. And it was,
occupation.
yeah, it was just, and then if you're going to do a musical, what sings? Well, a Broadway musical sings. They had another idea of making the musical within the musical based on another movie, and I was like, no, you already have a movie. Let's just focus on something else. So we came up with this idea of this Shakespeare. And so, yes, it was about, the main thing I said to them was, I said, listen, the only way we're going to make this work is that if we tell our story and we get them to care about our characters, and slowly, hopefully, they won't be thinking about the movie, which was, I think, exactly what happened. Plus, we were dealing with the Me Too movement, and how do we bring that into 2019 and tell this story with respect to women, to what's going on now. So that was a constant conversation, constant.
Right, and how do you sort of put this into Tootsie when one of the elements of Tootsie is that, ironically, as soon as the main character puts drag on, doors start opening for him.
Yeah.
And so for him to learn a lesson that, like, women are under a different kind of pressure, how did you sort of manage that in the script?
I think we started first and foremost saying, listen, what the core of this is, what would you do if you can't do what you're passionate and you were born to do? If any of us were saying, okay, we can't do what we know we love to do, how far would you go to say, I have to do this? So that was the beginning of how far is Michael, the actor, going to do when he's being told he can't do it anymore. And the other most important thing was the character that he comes in and creates, Dorothy, has got to be a real, honest, believable person / woman, and that's there are 3 stars, but there are really two stars. It's Michael and Dorothy, and you have to understand both of them. And so we were always talking about Dorothy as a real person and not anything as a caricature. So
one of the things that I was struck by with Tootsie was how many jokes there were, and you can feel, you and the actors and the writers, through rehearsals, through workshops, just being like, more jokes, more jokes, more jokes.
I have to say, okay. Okay, but
I mean, it's a
Robert Horn is a
compliment.
really funny writer, and he's done a lot of stuff, but he's come from TV, so he's used to writing, but those jokes, there are jokes, but they really are character-driven jokes, which were so great, and he was just so good with all this. And by the way, we cut out a lot of them, because a lot of times I would say, you don't need that joke. I know it's funny, but you don't need that joke. So it was sort of wonderful to watch a writer just deep into those characters and then find what's funny about that situation. And so yes.
Yeah, none of the jokes feel like Family Guy meta jokes
Yes.
that take you out of the story or
Yeah.
anything. Yeah, that's not what I mean.
No, I know that. I'm just saying that it was a great thing to sort of find, you don't have to, there are funny jokes, which is great, but it's so character driven. Plus you have really great actors who really understand humor. So all of those, it was written for these specific actors that we have now. So
Des, your lead in Too Proud is on stage for every scene, and not only is he in scenes, he's going into scenes with fellow actors. He's dancing with them. He's singing with them. Well, he doesn't really sing until a certain point. Really sing until a certain point, and he's also narrating the entire show. What was the search like to find the actor that you knew could sort of muscle all of that?
I want to say he's exhausted too.
Yeah.
Yeah, after all that. He's Derek Baskin is an actor that I've known for some time, and if you're casting Hamlet, you better start off by making sure that the actor can be funny, even in a dramatic role like Hamlet. It requires a certain amount of charm and grace, and it definitely requires a sense of humor to hold an audience for a couple of hours. And Derek is a very soulful guy and a man of depth, but he's also he has a wicked sense of humor. And so I think we had great confidence in him from the beginning. And by the way, he doesn't sing as much lead as the other four guys or the other people in the company, in fact. But he does have a spectacular song at the end. And, he's certainly one of the best singers in the company. So it's nice to have that arrow in your quiver when you're working with a story for 2 hours.
Well, it's even more pressure for him, right? It's like you're gonna monologue the entire show. You're gonna be in every scene, and everyone's gonna be waiting till the final moment for you to sing. So you better bring the house down.
and it's you've got to kill in that moment. And we intentionally, Dominique, we talked about this a lot. Our music director Kenny Seymour, and we have the great Harold Wheeler doing orchestrations for us. So they all came from the South, the Temptations, and they were part of the migration to Detroit, and they grew up in the church and learned to sing by singing gospel. And so we talk about that quite a bit in the play. It's inevitable, of course, but we wait until that moment of pathos at the end. We wait for a really emotional moment. And that's the song that Derek gets to sing. And the audience quite literally rises up with him. So he may have to wait for a long time before he gets to sing, but there's a pretty good payoff.
There's there's an actress in the show, forgive me, I don't have note cards to remember her name, who plays Derek's character's wife, who delivers a wild, show-stopping moment. I don't know if I've ever really seen this in a Broadway show where a peripheral character comes on and just destroys in one note, really. I mean, she sings a whole song, but there's one note where it felt like the whole audience was going to shoot through the roof.
Yeah.
What was it like designing that moment for her and knowing that you had this performer who could do that?
I got to say, it was to some extent it was the other way around. That song, If You Don't Know Me By Now, is a song that Otis did not remember recording, and they recorded it to back up a great Detroit R&B singer. And she also has a killer voice. But one of the things that was really important to us is we wanted all four of the actresses in the show to be able to sing, to have a moment where they could really, get featured and really show off their wares. And it also creates a musical balance that's very important to strive for. And so, to some extent, that was just good fortune. Rashidra just has a killer instrument. She blows the roof off the stage house. But that was as much good fortune as good management. The song was there before, she came along. We didn't actually put it in just for her, and I hope she never leaves because she's very gifted.
And how was it assembling the rest of the cast around Derek?
I want to say it really wasn't around Derek. We started, you were asking about how long these things take. So I've been on this for 5 years, and Dominique and I have been working very hard. We spent a lot of time together before a word was written. We spent many hours with the songs, working on an outline. Dominique went off to write. I went off to work with the designers and put together the physical production.
Can I ask?
But
can I ask
go ahead, sure.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but just curious. When you are working for 5 years on something, and you're in the earliest stages where you're just meeting with Dominique, the writer, and talking about what the show could possibly be, are you directing other things at that time as well? Like, do you have another musical or another play that's further into production that you're also working on?
Oh God, I hope so. For 5 years, it would
Oh
be
my
yes.
God, we'd
That
be in
would I would
trouble.
get, I think, a pretty impatient. Yeah. So yeah, you tend to have lots of balls in the air. My assistant was dutifully looking back through the last 15 years of my career, and I think she came up with the fact that I think I've done 27 plays in that period of time, and not all musicals like you. I get to do other things. I think I've done 6 plays by William Shakespeare in that period. So yeah, and they inform each other. So it's really good to have more than one project going on. It's you cross pollinate, and you learn, you pick up skills from different kinds of projects. But the casting, which was done by Tara Rubin, who's a fantastic casting director in the city, we actually saw people for all of the parts simultaneously. And I think we did 3 table readings before we did a 6-week workshop. And then we went to Berkeley. We did the show in Berkeley. We've been in Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles, and in Toronto, doing productions on the way to the Imperial Theater.
So are you tweaking and changing as you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Musicals don't get, there's an expression, musicals don't get finished, they just get opened. And I think that's true. You're constantly making changes, and you have to be self-critical all the way through the process.
I mean, you had a great, that you were able to go to each of those cities is a real gift.
It's like the old days.
The old days
Yeah.
of really being able to look in front of an audience, because an audience changes everything.
Yeah, it was
a
a
once
blessing.
you get an audience in.
And we also managed to keep the company together while we waited for a theater. There's such a glut on Broadway theaters these days. So Ira Pittleman and Tom Halson, you've worked with them. They were very loyal to the company and wanted to keep everybody working on the way to Broadway.
Did you have that experience with Tootsie, where you guys were able to take it somewhere prior to Broadway?
We took it to Chicago.
Chicago, right?
And
That's what I thought.
Chicago is such a great city, and it's a real theater city. I went to school there, so I was 100% saying, yeah, we had cities that we could have picked from. LA, Seattle, there's DC. There are cities that if you're going to go try out something, you sort of say, okay, let's try out there. But Chicago, I just was really gung-ho about it because I think they're a really terrific theater town. But you just don't know what you have until you get in front of an audience. You think you do, and then you go, oh, boy, that doesn't work, So it's so important to do it. So to have that luxury is such a gift. But you try to get it out as much as you can. But it's expensive now.
Camille, you had said that you were working with the actors, and Jeremy Pope was here, and he had said that one of the things that you did was you sort of helped them find the moves rather than force them to learn very specific moves. Is that true? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, so within my process, there's a combination of structure, but I allow for improvisation. So one of the things that we do is have a lot of conversation. So I asked all of the men, how do you feel about singing these songs? Because that's going to inform and inspire me to create the language. And we also spoke about the African diaspora and how it's about a community, but it's also about the individuality. So it was important for them to find their own root inside of it in order for the collective to be strong. So it was a combination.
And how long did you have with them to sort of create this?
I had a very short amount of time.
Really?
Yes. So the margin for error was very short.
Because this wasn't going to other cities, right? This was already at Lincoln
No.
Center, and then
Right.
you, Tripp, and Terrell were bringing it to Broadway.
Right. So I just have to. The time that they gave me in terms of Tripp and Terrell and the men, everyone was so engaged, and I worked with my associate choreographer, Ricky Tripp, as well. So, even though I think there's something about having a short amount of time because it's the intention, and it causes you to just get right to what are the needs and what do we need to bring out from this. So even though there was a short amount of time, I didn't really focus on that, and I really wanted to focus on the intention.
So now the big important question, where were you when you found out that you were nominated for the Tony, and what did it feel like?
I was sleeping, and my
That's what
best
they all
friend.
say. If
No,
I had
no.
Any semblance
No,
of
I
idea that I was going to be nominated for anything, I would be looking at the TV like this.
You know, I didn't want to do that. You know, I just wanted to have a sense of peace either way. And my best friends called me screaming, so that was my alarm clock for the day. And I just couldn't have thought of a better way to celebrate and to share it with people that I love and that love me.
I was, I think, one of my favorite places. I was at the breakfast table with my beautiful wife, drinking coffee. I think that's Johnny Cash's definition of heaven. So that's where I was, and and it was a nice moment, I will say. And
This is your seventh nomination?
sixth. Thank you. It's my sixth nomination. Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was six prior and this is the seventh. I asked you in the green room. You told me. I already forgot.
He's got 9, so I've got a ways to go.
Losing.
But
9. I believe you were probably sleeping.
I was not sleeping. I have 2 9-year-olds. So my partner, he got up and said, why don't I go take the kids to school? And so he did. And I got up a little bit, but we had just gotten a new TV, so I didn't know how to turn it on. I thought, oh, wow, I'm going to miss all this. And, you know, you're always, yes, but you want to know how your team, and you want to celebrate the shows. And so it wasn't really as much about me as I wanted to know how the other shows. And I'm lucky I have a Kiss Me Kate running it too. And so yeah, I called. I said, I can't turn this TV on. You got to get up here really quick. So he was just back, so we turned it on, and it was a very nice moment. We were saying earlier, because it's your first,
Yes.
and I said it never gets old. You know, it's always nice, and I've certainly had years I'm not nominated, but I don't think it ever gets bad as the first one. I think it's really, and may you have many, many more, but the first one is just a very unique, special time. So I think that's really awesome.
Thank you. I think it's a chance for me to say thank you to my community for being there and encouraging me to focus and go after my dreams. So anytime I'm able to do that, it's a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations to the 3 of you. We have some questions from our audience. Who has a question? Hi.
Hi, I have a question for Camille.
Hi.
Is your process in choreographing a show different from a play like Choir Boy versus like a musical like Once on This Island?
Oh, yes, great question. No, it's a little bit of the same. It's about what are the feelings, what is the intention, the root, the language, depending on what we're pulling from. So with Once on This Island, it was specific to Afro-Cuban, Afro-Haitian movement. And for this, it was more South African gumboot and step. So within that, there is a shift, but the intention always has to be there, and pulling out the individuality and empowering people in the midst of that, I think is always and should be always in my process.
One more.
Hi. So we have an online question. They're asking, do you use parts of your life, such as experiences or people, to help you write playbills?
To help
Write the plays that you guys are writing.
do the
Yeah.
plays.
Do the plays, yeah.
draw on our own experiences.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But you know, being a director is kind of a dilettante's paradise. So you actually get to dive into a different solar system with every project. You know, maybe you're in 10th century Scotland, or you're in the, you know, you're back in, you know, Egypt with the Ptolemaic dynasty, and so you get to research and you get to spend a lot of time studying. You can go into a project not necessarily being an expert. You better be somewhat of an expert coming out the other side. But I think the important thing is to draw on the experiences of your collaborators, particularly the actors and the writers, of course, but you really want people to personalize their work. And so as a director, you need to spend a good deal of time listening.
It is about the collaboration. I mean, it's all about that. It's been interesting talking because I also think in musicals, I think the most important collaboration you have, as far as a director is concerned, is your choreographer, and you work as a team. You work together one-on-one, and you know, it's I feel it's totally equal, you know, when you're doing a musical with choreographer. It's the choreographer and director together as a team, and you have to be on the same page. And if you're not, you're going to run into some trouble.
Yeah, that word collaborate, you know, Stephen Sondheim says, you know, collaborate. I collaborate you and you collaborate me. And sometimes that's a pretty good description of the process too. Although it tends to be congenial, but it's also okay to have animated disagreements. The way you have to work ultimately in a collaboration is I convince you or you convince me, and we don't move forward until one of those two things happens.
You know, you say that the choreographer and the director are really working in tandem when it comes to a musical. Do you find that is because so much of the musical, the moves themselves are sweeping you through scenes and the story, and they're just as much of a part as the acting?
I think it is. I think when you stop telling the story in words and music, then you continue to do it in dance. So, and I totally agree. It's a constant discussion, and where are we taking this? And is this clear? Is this moment clear? And what and that? So it's all storytelling. All of it is script, songs, dance. It's all storytelling, and so you have to make sure you're telling the story you want as a team.
Yeah.
And what was that like for you? Because I mean, you did not build this from the ground up. There was already a play that had been performed that did not have your choreography. How did you become this such a close collaborator with Tripp?
Well, Tripp was extremely generous in just allowing me to pour in my vision. So when I heard the spirituals, I was always familiar with them. But when I heard the men singing, immediately HBCU Step and South African Gumboot came into mind. And I'm really tremendously thankful because he said he was totally game for it, and so were the guys. And I think to answer the question about how do you collaborate and use your voice. I don't believe that you can choreograph without putting your personal voice. And even though this is a show about Black men, I am a Black woman. And so what does their story look like through my lens? How can I lift up and support Black men on a Broadway stage and also give voice to Black women and what our voices are on a Broadway stage as well?
Well, I love all of your shows. Congratulations again on the nominations. Thank you so much for being here. Good luck on Tony night. Everybody give Scott, Des, and Camille a huge round of applause for coming by. Thank you.